I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're learning the 10 Commandments. Actually, all week long we're learning them. And we're focusing today on Commandments 3 and 7. Now, I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't we be learning Commandments 3 and 4? Well, I was educated in Arkansas, and that's just how we count. 1, 2, 3, 7. No. Actually, I teach Commandments 3 and 7 together because they're closely related. That is, they both concern themselves with unfaithfulness, or as the Bible sometimes calls it, infidelity or adultery. The third commandment focuses on spiritual infidelity, that is, infidelity between us and God, unfaithfulness when we're unfaithful to the Lord. And then, of course, the seventh commandment concerns relational infidelity, that is, when people are unfaithful, husbands and wives. Now, the third commandment, let's do it this way. We hold up 3 fingers like a W for Wiggins, for example. 3 fingers and say to yourself, do not take the Lord's name in vain. Now, Exodus 20, verse 7 says this, do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Now, the Bible describes Jesus as the bridegroom, and we, the church, are described as the bride. Now imagine a man and a woman get married, and as part of that ceremony, the woman takes a man's name as her own. We're married now, I have his name. And the two become one. But what if afterwards she decides she wants to cheat on her husband? She chooses to be intimate with another man. She doesn't leave her husband per se, but secretly she just doesn't want to leave the lifestyle that her husband affords her, so she claims to be his wife, and yet secretly she loves another man. She would have taken her husband's name, but she would have taken it in vain. And her adulterous actions, her unfaithful actions, are not consistent with the vows of faithfulness to the one man. Now, in commandment number 3, God is telling us that it is a sin to receive his name. What does that mean, to do so in vain? Well, it means that we would claim to be his faithful bride while carrying on a love affair with the world. God calls that spiritual adultery. And God was commanding his people saying, if you're going to be called by my name, if you're going to be married to me, for instance, then you had better live like it. Wanting the benefits of God's blessing and yet denying him your faithfulness is to have received his name, but to done so in vain. And it may be an indicator that you were never saved at all. Now, on to the 7th commandment, okay? Hold up, let's see, we're going to hold up a high five on one hand and then a peace sign on the other hand, because that's 7. And then you say to yourself, number 7, do not commit adultery. Number 7, do not commit adultery. Exodus chapter 20, verse 14 says it in this way, you shall not commit adultery. And you know what? Just as in commandment number 3, which dealt with spiritual infidelity, spiritual unfaithfulness between us and God, number 7 covers relational unfaithfulness between husbands and wives. And that's why I teach them together, 3 and 7. And the number 7 is pretty cut and dried. Doesn't take a lot of explanation. Just be faithful to your spouse. For how long, Steve? For your entire life. You know, sadly, marital unfaithfulness has become all too common in our culture. And it's destructive because marriage between a Christian man and woman is the earthly representation of God's faithfulness to his people and our faithfulness to him in return. So infidelity, unfaithfulness, not only kills a family value system, it actually torpedoes our gospel witness. So now let's review the commandments which we have learned, okay? Number 1, right? There's only one God. Number 2, don't make any more. Number 3, right? Do you remember this? Do not take the Lord's name in vain. And then, of course, number 7, right? Do not commit adultery. It's going to get easier as we go on. Let's memorize these and then we'll know them. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at groundworksministries.com.